Curt, how did you get the opportunity to go to China, and what made you make that move?
Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I had to move to China to live the American dream. The opportunity came from my girlfriend, Ukrainian, living in China, teaching English. And through the 2016 debacle, after that was done with all that, she said, honey, you want to get out of the country, come with me to China and teach English. I did my research, booked the plane, got all that, and found myself in China.
I've got my first impressions of China, but when you got off that plane and you went into the terminal, what were your very first impressions of your new country?
Here at home, I'm a geotech engineer. I know a lot about infrastructure. And I've always been able to look at bridges, roads, tunnels, high-speed rail. I can look at these things and generally understand how much they cost. So when I landed in China, my heart sank. You know, I've been all around the world, but I'd never been to the second wealthiest nation in the world, which is China. All over Europe, all over the Caribbean, all of that. But the Beijing airport, there's only one word, the glory of it, OMG. Just the size, the scope, the newness. I've been all over the United States. Our airports look like ran down shitholes. So my heart sank. My first impression was, someone's doing something big here. Something real big. And when you do that, you create jobs. I know that too. So my first impression was, wow, how far we have fallen.
You arrive in a new country. You've got no job. How quickly did you find a job?
Day 6, I was working in my school. Jobs are very plentiful in China, especially for American college-educated people that want to teach English. Plentiful. You can throw a rock and hit one. You don't like it, quit that job, go across the street. Almost like the 1960s America. It's amazing. I found a job in Jijitan. I lived in Dalian. I found a job in Jijitan as a school manager for a kindergarten. I'd never been a school manager before. Wow. Had to do a lot of studying. And an English teacher at the same time. When you go to China, once again, to the infrastructure, it amazed me. And it saddened me at the same time. I lived 115 miles away from my school. I got there in 29 minutes and some seconds for 55 cents each way on a bullet train that went 190 miles an hour. So once again, it was just a comparison of how can we not have this in our country?
Right.
And I rode this beautiful, silky smooth, amazing thing for an incredibly wealthy, easy price to my work every day.
And the interesting thing is when I was in China, which was back in the early 80s, okay, none of this existed.
Hadn't boomed yet.
None of this existed. Okay? You landed at Beijing, and you'd have thought the airport was probably built in about the 1910s.
Absolutely.
And just the whole economy took off. And so this is something that's going to be new to me. Their malls, I hear, are absolutely incredible.
Well, that's the first clue about the American dream part. I'm an 80s baby. And every 80s baby knows if you were a cool kid, you hung out at the mall. That's just the way it was. And you're a super cool kid if you could hang out at the arcade. I wasn't old enough to do that. But that's just the point. Our malls are dying or dead. It is bad. Real bad. In fact, on YouTube, there's Dead Mall series. And it's depressing to watch because I know what a mall is. A mall is a symptom and a symbol of how healthy your economy is for the people. Because unlike most people, I know what the 3 elements you need to build a healthy, successful, thriving mall. You need 3 elements. Decent infrastructure to bring people in from all around. You need expendable income. That means your wages have to be high enough to where all your bills are paid, and now you can go to this place to pay a premium price at one location. And then the third one, you need expendable time. A population that's working 60, 70 hours a week doesn't have time to drive and park and go into a mall. A population that's working 35 to 40 hours a week has the time. So when I get to China, wow, here I am. I've got my girlfriend, Julia, and we were going into the Promenade Mall. Now, me getting a school manager position, I had to go get a whole new wardrobe. Suits, ties, all this, had to look sharp. It was almost like a scene from Billie Jean, the movie Billie Jean, how the guy with the hot, beautiful girlfriends going up and down the escalators of a packed mall with bags in their hands. I had to move to China to have the expendable time and the expendable income to spend at the mall. It's weird and maybe quirky, but it's a piece of a much bigger picture.
Talking of infrastructure, That's another thing that they put a lot of money into
Oh.
for just overall for the whole country. Give us some of your impressions on that.
Over the last 15 years, they've invested somewhere between $5.5 to $7 trillion of just infrastructure in their own country. That's the reason why they have more interstate highway systems now, or miles of highway, than America does. And a lot of people think China's physically bigger. It's like that much bigger. It's the same physical size. They surpass us in highway mileage, and their stuff is glass. Their high-speed rail, all that stuff, it's brand new. I tell people here in Colorado, their back alleyways are in better conditions than I-25. Think about it. Now, how could this be? Well, for one, I don't know. They haven't been in a war since 1979. Tends to cost money to go to war. And more specifically, Keynesian economics. You have got to build into your country or you're going to die. One of my favorite movies from a movie is Tommy Boy. He and a company, there's only growing or they're dying. Third direction. And if you don't invest into your country like we used to, you're dying. China's living.
You actually ended up moving on up to the east side, didn't you? And you met a very interesting character
did.
called Whiskey. Tell us a little bit about this.
My first apartment in Daliang was beautiful, but it was in a really kind of ugly area. And I really wanted to move Julie and I because I knew the money we were making. I really wanted to live in a much nicer area, and I knew the opportunities. So we got a realtor. Found an absolute gorgeous apartment, about 2,200 square feet, 11-foot tall ceilings, hardwood floors, marble shower on the beach, 34-story high-rise on the top floor. I moved up to the east side. My neighbors drove GTRs, Ferraris, Bentleys. It was pretty impressive. I felt kind of special. Then I met a brand new father at the school. His code name or call sign is Whiskey. It was almost like cosmic forces brought us together. He's obsessed with the American military, and more specifically, tankers in the American military. And when he found out I was a tanker, that's all it needed to be. Him and I hung out a lot. I didn't know all the details, all the micro numbers of China, the taxation rates, this rate, legislation you've passed in the last 15 years. I knew the macro. I knew those numbers before I got there. But he could fill in my holes, and I could fill in his holes. Because he knew the macro numbers of America, but not the micro numbers. Whiskey told me 100% that we followed FDR. We followed FDR. Ever since President Xi got elected, taxation on the wealthy went right around FDR's level, around 70%. Taxation on the corporations around 55%. Then in the mid-2000s, they started subsidizing college. They know I need to build a brain trust to push an economy further.
Right.
Identical to FDR. They followed the yellow brick road of success. And one of the greatest compliments Whiskey's ever told me, he said, Curt, I ask so many Americans about your economy when I meet them. And they always say things are great and all this stuff. You're the only one who actually knew the story. You knew the story of how you became a nation. And he was always fascinated. And I said, Whiskey, it's my passion. Ever since my second tour in Iraq, I've dedicated myself to understanding where'd the money go, how'd we get here, by reading legislation and things like that. And he was a wealth of knowledge to me, and he always tells me I was a wealth of knowledge to him. He had me actually speak into his class twice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Now, I couldn't be talking all that open, but
No.
I really went on the lines of congratulations. I told them where they're going to be in 20 years, 30 years. I told them the glide path that their government has chosen to put them on. I told them basically, congratulations, and keep working harder. You're the future of China, and your government is behind you to give you the foundation, the tools in the toolbox to make a prosperous society for all.
Right.
So, yeah, we're still friends today, and we talk pretty consistently.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, he's amazing.
That's nice. What would you say are the biggest comparisons between the Chinese economy and the American economy?
Just economy.
Just economy.
China has their problems. They harvest organs out of poor people to give it to generals and rich people. So they have their problems.
Well, look at the smog issues they're suffering from. So they've got serious problems in some areas, but...
And we can get into that. They're doing some stuff about it. But on the economy, it's the economy, stupid, It's heaven and hell. It's dystopic, weird. This is like 1985, Back to the Future 2, when Biff became president. Okay? The Chinese economy, as Richard Wolff will tell you, I love Richard Wolff, has risen the average wage of 627% in the last 15 years. It is the largest increase of population wealth in world history. That's amazing.
What about inflation, though?
Oh, of course there's inflation, but
But they've held it below the increase of wages?
absolutely.
Oh.
They have typically.
Because that's the key.
Well, Whiskey says, even though he knows they play with the numbers just like
Yeah.
our government plays with, but they usually carry 2 and 3, 4% right in there. But their wages are rising high enough, fast enough to where that doesn't matter all that much. It counteracts it in the positive for the people. My neighbor, Rose, who was my next door neighbor in my first apartment, she was able to hire me for 4 hours a week at 40 US an hour. Mm-hmm. She owned an apartment. She owned a small SUV, and I don't mean American owned, bank owned. I mean owned.
Owned.
She was able to take her family down to Macau, China for a vacation. She worked at the Roosevelt Mall as a cashier at McDonald's. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Because they make $115 RMB an hour, which is $16.04 US cents. They're able to afford their life, and that's why their middle class is right around 600,000 or 600 million people now, to where our middle class is contracting, causing economic instability in this country. But it's the freedom also, and I know that maybe sounds so weird to so many Americans, but I felt free there. The tension on the street, I didn't feel it. I feel tension on these city streets in America. I feel tensions in public areas. And that tension, I honestly believe, at the 70-80% mark, is an invisible ghost that Americans don't know about. Economic destabilization.
Right.
That stress comes out in so many different ways. It comes out in violence. It comes out in drug abuse. It comes out in, of course, opiate addiction. It comes out in massive suicide rates. They're all tied back to economic destabilization.
Yes.
This pattern has played out several times in human history, so it's not like it's not known. China was amazing. I have so much more information on China I really want to share.